What's up, guys? Welcome back to HRT. I hope your week was awesome. This week we have on Max. Max has been in the Discord server for a long time now. He's been an OG listener slash watcher of the podcast, and I'm really excited to have him on. His story is very moving and very educational, and I will say there is a bit of a trigger warning on this episode. We talk about eating disorders, some talk of abuse and whatnot. So if that's not something you think you can handle, I suggest maybe skipping this episode. But I also suggest not skipping this episode because it was a really great one. Um, I personally learned a lot, and Max was very vulnerable. And I think sometimes that's very important so that other people, other trans people, can learn and relate and not feel so alone. Uh, so just another thank you to Max for sharing all of his experiences with us. And yeah, join the Discord, subscribe to the Patreon. I would appreciate it. And that's about it. Let's go talk to Max. All right, guys. Bye. All right, Max. Where are you from?
I'm from Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas.
Yes.
How does Houston, Texas treat you as a trans person?
I would say it depends on where you're at in Houston. I would say my experiences have been pretty good. I have a really supportive work environment. And I think that makes like the world of the difference since that's where I spend most of my time. Even my doctor's office though, and like my dentist, they like ask what my pronouns are and like what my name is and stuff like that, which was not like what I was expecting when I came out and went to a doctor's office in Texas. Like,
Yeah.
um, and I don't live in like downtown city Houston either. I live like in the suburbs of Houston. So like it's even more so where I'm at would be like less accepting in that. But I thus far haven't really had any bad experiences, but I would say that is not the typical experience of someone that's trans in Texas. So
Yeah, I'll say. But hey, I
yeah,
love to hear that.
overall it's not like there's not a lot of like people that are like educated or aware, but I feel like I've just kind of knock on wood, but I've lucked out in that department. So
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, me too.
How old are you, Max?
I am 22.
22. Okay.
I am.
I remember the first time I actually talked to you was on Discord when we were playing games
Hmm.
a long time
Yes, I do
ago now.
remember.
At least a couple months ago now. You were pre-T. And
Yes, I was.
dude, let me just say it's so cool to I mean, I know there's other people in the Discord server that have started T since, they joined the Discord and started watching the podcast, but like you were the one that
Hmm.
sticks out to me obviously cuz you're in the Discord all the time. We always talk, but hearing you like pre-T and seeing you pre-T and then now, dude, I love
It's
it.
wild.
I love it so much. You seem like much more comfortable and happy and like confident in your own skin now.
1000%.
Yeah.
I'm so much more confident and happy like now versus pre-T. But confidence like is wild.
Yeah, that'll do it. I mean,
Yeah.
how long have you been on testosterone?
4 months and 2 weeks as of yesterday.
Dude, 4 months. Wow.
Yeah, 4 months.
4 months is, I feel like, where I've said it before, but it is where like the voice drops and like
Yeah.
where all the changes happen. But I feel like your voice has been deep now for a minute.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It really has. I was showing somebody a video earlier I had made. I think I posted it on the Discord actually. And I was just like, wow, my voice was like really deep by like month 2, but like even like month 3, like I feel like it was where it's at now. Maybe a little bit deeper now,
mm,
but
nice. How do you are you on sub Q or IM?
sorry, Cody. I'm on some Q.
It hurts me. It hurts me a lot.
My very first shot I did IM, but it wasn't it wasn't by choice. That's a whole story
Let's
we get into.
let's talk about your first injection. Please tell me the story.
Okay. So when I first started T, so I got it through QueerMed and they're amazing. Absolutely love them. And I had a really great experience with them, like A plus. I went to the pharmacy and like I got my testosterone, but when I was there, they used my parents' insurance, and I've been moved out of my parents' house for like 3 years. I don't know, it's not that big of a deal, but I was like, it's gonna send them something in the mail, like, and they're gonna know, like, and I was just gonna play stupid was like my plan from there on. I was like, they're very stick their heads in the sand type of people. Like, I'm just gonna be like, what voice change? I don't know what you're talking about. Um, and so I leave the pharmacy. I'm a little stressed because of that, but I'm like still like super excited, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to the doctors because Career Med like gave me the testosterone and all of that. But I was like, I want someone to show me so that I don't like, like kill myself on accident.
Right.
Um, I was like, I feel like that would be something I would do. Is like hit a nerve or like a
Mhm.
vessel and like blood comes spurting out of my leg. So I was like, I want someone to show me. And so I'm driving there, and then my mom texted me something, and I don't know like what it was about. I don't remember. And I was like, I'll like get back to you later. Like, I'm going to the doctor's right now. And she goes, oh, your sibling and I are heading there too. And I was like, fuck.
Oh,
And so then I'm
bad
like
luck.
freaking out, right? Yeah, it's bad luck. I was like freaking out, and I was like, great, because my doctor's office uses my pronouns and my name as they should.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm gonna be outed in this lobby. So I wasn't about to do that. So what does my dumbass do? I call them and I'm like, hey, I need y'all to like dead name and misgender me, please. Um, because my family's gonna be there and I'm not trying to do that right now. Like I was
Mhm.
like, this is like my day.
Mhm.
They're not ruining it.
Yeah.
Um, and they were like, oh my gosh, that sucks. We can do that. um, and so I get there, and who's right in front of me? My mom. Um, and she like turns around and she's like, hey, I know you. And I'm like, yes, yes, you do. Um,
Ha ha
and
ha.
then, yeah, like, this is so funny. Um, and then my receptionist is like, hey, like, you can come talk up here, like, right beside my mom. Like, my mom's here. And she's like, you can come talk right here to this receptionist. I was like, I really would rather not. And then this receptionist goes, hey, like, dead name. And then is like, did you bring your vials with you? And I'm just like, I'm
Oh
like,
god.
I
It's
just
like
looked at her like wide eyed, and she was like, oh shit, I wasn't supposed to say that. And then she was like, you can just come back. And I was like, thank you. Um, so yeah, so at this point, like I'm shitting bricks. I'm like so stressed out. Like I'm like, my mom's here. Like they might have used my parents' insurance on accident. Like
Mm.
I'm stressing, and like the lady's like, I'm so sorry, da da da, and I'm like, you're fine. Like it's not your fault, really. And so at this point, I'm like, you know what? Y'all just do my shot for me this time, and y'all can show me next time because like I'm not in the headspace to do my own shot. Like because I was like, I want to be able to pay attention, and my mind is too all over the place right now. Um, and so they're like, okay. And I'm like, here's my tea and here's my needle. And they're like, we don't need your needle. We have our own. And I was like, okay, like, it's like, I get to keep it. Right.
Mhm.
Um, and they take the testosterone bottle back and they like pull everything up and that, and they come back in with this like huge needle. I'm sure it's like an IM needle, but to me, it's huge compared to like, the sub Q needles.
Mhm.
And so I was like, that is not the needle I saw on YouTube. Because like I watched a bazillion videos obviously on how to do the shot, but like
Mhm.
I asked her, I was like, is that supposed to go in my stomach? And she was like, oh no, this doesn't go in your stomach. And I was like, but I'm sub Q and I was gonna do it in my stomach. um and then she was like, I don't know about that, like I don't know that that would work well, but we can try. And I was like, no, let's not.
Bruh.
I was like, let's not try that out.
Oh my god.
um and so then like we're like, okay, we're just gonna do IM this time. She's gonna do my cheeks. Like that's just what we're gonna do. I will come back next time so that she can show me how to do it myself. So she does the shot and everything right. I go home. Okay. The next day, I'm at work and I work with kids and I'm like sweating. I have a headache. My heart's racing. I'm like hella hot. My face is red. By the end of the day, I don't think I had an appetite either. Like I just was so off and I was not feeling good. And by the end of the day, I was running a fever. And me being me, I was like, I work with kids, so I could just be like sick, right?
Mhm.
Um, but also I was like, I did just get my shot yesterday. This isn't because of this, right? Like, so I messaged my PCP and was like, hey, it's like XYZ is happening. That's not why, right? Um, and she was like, or she didn't respond yet. Okay. So then I went to an urgent care after I got off work.
Mhm.
I think I even like my face was so red. I think that I went to my like supervisor and was like, "Can you take this kiddo out to his mom because like I look awful right now and like I need to go."
Don't
And
want to
she was like,
worry
"Yeah."
anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I went to the urgent care and was like, "Look, this is what's happening." And I was like, "It can't be because of my T-shot, right? Like, I haven't heard of this." Like, um, and he's like, "Nah, like, let me do some blood work and like do some tests and see like what's going on, right?"
Mhm.
And so he does that. And while he's gone, my PCP messaged me back and was like, "Honestly, I've never really injected someone with like that high of a dose before. So like it's possible like that it could be because of that." And I was like, "What do you mean like such a high dose?" Like 0.25 was like what I had said. And I told the lady at the place like my dose was 0.25, right?
Mhm.
Which we'll get into, like I will defend them a little bit on that in a second. But so then I was like, what's going on? Um like what did they inject me with? And it like hit me and I was like, oh my gosh, they never gave me my bottle back. And if I had done 0.25, then they would have just given me the bottle back so that I could use the rest of it, right? Right? Like I was like, oh my God. And so I'm kind of freaking out now. And so I call in the urgent care dude or whatever that was like talking to me a few seconds ago and was like, so hypothetically, what would happen if what would happen if I was injected with a whole bottle of testosterone? And he was like, that would do it.
Oh my god.
And he was like, do you know this for sure? And I was like, no, but like, yeah. And I like showed him the message and it kind of explained the story from yesterday. And like, he was like, I mean, it could be because like your hormones, like, that's like such a big jump, like out of nowhere. Like, even people that are on like, because I believe there are people that do a whole bottle per shot. Not many, but like for an IM maybe. But like, you have to like really work up to that. It has to be someone who's like, maybe their body's not like processing the hormones as much. Like, it just
Yeah.
depends on the person, I guess.
Not
And
weekly
so,
though, right? Because
no,
that would
not
be
weekly. No,
insane.
no, not weekly. It would be every 2 weeks, I think, or like once a month. I don't know what it is. I just know that I've seen like a few people that have done it, but not
Yeah.
like weekly. And so he's like, I'm like, am I gonna die? Like, and he's like, no, otherwise every prepubescent teen boy out there would be dying. And I was like, you right.
I feel you.
He was like, but it's just like your body's not used to it, so your body's like flipping shit right now, basically. And so I left there and he was like, you should be like fine and stuff, you're just gonna kind of feel like shit, like really hot, like, because you know, like when you start testosterone, like they do tell you like you're gonna get hotter, your like heat tolerance is gonna be less there, you know, you're gonna be sweatier, hungrier, so on and so forth. But like they're not like, I felt like I was sick, but it's because I was so hot too. Like that's why I was running a fever, because I was just so hot. Like, and it was in the summer too, so like that really doesn't help. um
That sounds horrible. Like that makes
yeah,
me
so it was like 100
nauseous.
degree, and I live in Texas, so it's like
uh,
it was like 100 degrees like plus every day.
uh,
And I was still feeling not great for the next like 4 days. Like not maybe at that same level, but he told me it peaks at like, after you do your shot, every time it peaks at 24 or 48 hours, is when it peaks. So he was like, once you get past that mark, it shouldn't get worse than that. And I was like, so it might be worse tomorrow though? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, great. And it was a little bit. And so I was not getting a clear message back from my PCP though on whether or not they injected me with that high of a dose. Like I kept messaging and I wasn't getting any messages, and I was starting to get frustrated. And I was like, it's probably because they know they fucked up and they can't say it, right?
mhm.
And so finally I had called them, and the lady that answered was like the receptionist, and she was like, I have the answer in your file for you, but like I can't tell you. And I was like, yeah, so y'all did it. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
She was like, let me get so and so on and then they can tell you. And then she was like, yes, like you were injected with the whole bottle. And here's my thing, like in their defense, the pharmacy labeled the bottle wrong. It did say one like I don't know what it is, but it said like
Yeah.
the whole bottle.
Yeah.
And so in their defense, like, but I also told them I was 0.25 and I was
Right.
sub Q, which means you're weekly. So like, and also like, here's my biggest thing is if you're a doctor and you're like, huh, this seems off, this seems weird, wouldn't
Mhm.
you be like, hey, like informed consent, like just like let them know and just be like, look, hey, like I just wanted to let you know that, like, I haven't seen this high of a dose before. I have concerns about injecting you with it. Like, are you sure you want me to do this? And then if she had said that, I would have been like, hold up, I'm not this whole bottle. I am 0.25 of this bottle. But I wasn't given the opportunity to do
Dude,
that. So,
that
yeah.
is like, I understand that the thing was labeled wrong by the pharmacy, but like as you said, especially because it was your first injection, like
Yeah.
that is absurd.
Wild. It is wild. And then, like, my side effects, like, are like, I don't know. I don't know how true all this is because, like, honestly, like, I've just watched a bunch of YouTube videos, obviously. But I feel like a lot of people, like, I worked with 5 transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming people at my work, which is wild in Texas to have 5 people, right? I feel like everyone was telling me that, like, my, like, stuff was happening really quickly for me, like my voice or facial hair or like my face shape, like
I
stuff
was
like
gonna
that. And I
say
was just,
that's why your voice dropped so fast.
yeah.
Like
And so I
shit.
think that's why some things happen so quickly. And, like, to put it into perspective, um, my T levels, I got them checked like 3 weeks later, right? Because, like, that was a huge fucking dose. So I got them checked 3 weeks later, and, like, T levels ranged from like 300 to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, and mine was 700 after just 3 weeks on testosterone.
God, fucking Hulk.
um, and it was 700 at, like, my lowest. So I'd gotten it done, like, the day before my next shot. So, like, who knows what the fuck it was when I was at my highest, like. And so
Oh my
the
god.
negative about this, which I want to say, because I feel like I was talking to someone about this the other day, and she was like, I feel like some people would be like, shit, let me go do that then. And, like,
I
no,
thought.
because it sucked. But also, like, it's confusing because now we don't have a baseline for my levels. So, like, since then my levels have continued to drop, but they're in, like, male range, so it's fine. But, like, I felt really, like, physically and mentally unwell for, like, the second month, I would say,
Oh, I bet.
because my hormones dropped, like, big time, because I went from, like, fucking nothing, like, literally, like, my testosterone before I started T was, like, below the normal range for even an AFAB person. Like, so,
God.
like, talk about dysphoric prior finding that out. But
Dude,
um
you're like just like a ball of testosterone now. Like
yeah.
it just it is
A
coursing
ball of
through your
testosterone.
veins, bro.
It
Like
literally is. And so it was like I said, 700 that time, and then it went down to like 460 or something,
Mhm.
which is, like, not that big of a drop, but, like, I think it had gotten lower at one point because I was having a hard time getting my testosterone from the pharmacy. Um, Anyways, but
Mm.
yeah, so, like, it's just crazy to me that
That
that happened.
happened. Yeah, like that somebody injected you with a whole fucking bot like you were poisoned, brother. Like
I literally was.
like and oh my god, you did not make enough of a fuss over that, in my opinion. I would have raised hell.
Here's my thing, though, and why I didn't make a fuss, is I live in Texas, and this is a doctor's office that is offering to help
Ah, you're
people
right. I
with testosterone. And, like, also, like, my doctor isn't even allowed to prescribe me testosterone because her boss won't let her. But she was like, you don't have to tell him why you're coming in here. So, like, she's also, like, going a little bit out of her way to help me. Like, and so, like, also, like,
Mhm.
a pharmacy that's letting me pick up testosterone. So I was like, I'm not gonna, like, make a fuss over it because they are a place that's, like, helping people. So
You're nice. I would have sued and got that fucking bag,
I
bro.
definitely could have. Like,
You
I could have. I
100%
should
could
have.
have.
Definitely. I don't know if I could have sued them or if I would have had to sue the pharmacy. I feel like it would have been the pharmacy
Mm. Now
because, like, it was labeled wrong. So
yeah, right. Still though, as a doctor, I think you should double
definitely,
check.
I think you should. I would agree.
Um,
100%.
now who was this like your I forget we said, was this like your regular doctor or was this Queer Med? No.
No, so this was Queer Med prescribed me the testosterone A plus. They were amazing. I literally started testosterone 3 days after I spoke to them. Um,
Mm.
and my experience with them was great. And I just wanted assistance on, like, putting the shot in. Like I said, I've watched 1,000 videos on YouTube on how to do it, but, like, I was just like, I want assurance.
Yeah.
And so that's why I went to my PCP, like my general practitioner doctor. And it wasn't even her that technically injected me with the shot. It was like one of the nurses there that did it. And she felt awful. Like, she apologized to me next time she saw me. And I was like, it's like no hard feelings. Like,
How
but
do you
like,
apologize for like poisoning somebody? That is wild.
yeah, it is a little wild.
Damn.
Um,
And you're just like, it's
but
okay,
yeah,
it's fine.
I
No
was,
worries.
no worries. I thought I was dying there for a second, but it's okay.
Okay, so now you're with Queer Med, right? And you do your own
Yeah.
injections?
Yeah. So after that, I was like, I'll just do it myself
Yeah,
and
I
see what
wouldn't trust
happens.
another
And
motherfucker ever.
I worked with like a few trans guys at the time too. So I was just like, hey, can one of y'all come over and like guide me through this?
There
And
you
he
go.
was like, I got you.
That's cool.
And so that's what we did. And I videoed that time because the first one I was going to video it, but like, no, I was stressed. I was like, this isn't
Yeah.
fun.
Now, let's talk about surgeries a little bit. Top surgery, do you want it? Have you gotten it?
Yes, I want top surgery. I have not gotten top surgery. I started 2 jobs a few months ago to try to save for top surgery,
Mhm.
but that was too much. So like I want top surgery, but money. So
Yeah.
it is not in the cards right now, but one day it will definitely eventually happen. I don't really have like a timeline for that yet, but I that's like my biggest thing that I'm like, I want top surgery. I think I feel the same way about bottom surgery that you and a few other people have said. Like, I'm not saying dysphoria isn't there, but will I do anything about it? Probably not.
Me.
Um,
They're like so relatable.
yeah, like, and I feel like my like top dysphoria is a lot worse personally. So like,
Yeah.
and I have ways around that. Like, I use tape, and that really helps alleviate. Like, trans tape is like my favorite thing ever.
Okay, so when did you come out as trans?
I have a really roundabout answer to this. So I came out as trans to some of my friends in like June of 2023, so like not that long ago. I don't know how many months ago that is, maybe 6. I'm not sure.
6. Yeah, months.
I'm right. Okay, love that. And then at work publicly in July of 2023, and then my kids at work and parents didn't know till August, beginning of August. That was like a process. So yeah, like basically over the summer to August essentially is when I came out to everybody else,
Mhm.
at least.
And what about your family? Were they in that
My
mix?
family,
Yeah.
they didn't find out till I didn't tell them actually. They just kind of found out.
How it
So
goes.
yeah. So like I said earlier, I was just gonna kind of play stupid and be like head in the sand, like because that's what they're like. Like, so I was like, I'm just gonna be like, what voice change, like what facial hair. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's a funny story because how they found out. So like they found out in August, and which is like they found out a week after I started testosterone too. So when we had like this conversation that we ended up having, I was like 4 days, 5 days after like my actually it was probably more like 6 or 7 days after like my mega dose, so I still wasn't feeling like lovely. So I was like, I'm really not in the mood for this conversation right now, guys.
Yeah, don't blame you.
But they found out, so I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will know who No Offense is. And I love him. I watch him on YouTube. I like his music. I showed my mom a haircut, like his hair or something. Was like, I think I'm gonna grow my hair out to like that, right? Which keep in mind, I've had like this hair for like 3 years, so like I already had like a men's haircut or whatever. Like, but she showed the picture of my dad, and my dad was like, that looks like a men's haircut. Like, yes, sir, because it is. But like,
no shit, dog.
yeah. And then that's what made them question it. But the funny part about that is before this, like I was already wearing men's clothes. My hair was how it is now. My mom knew I used binders and trans tape. Like she knew I used trans tape and that it was called trans tape. But none of that made them question me being trans. It was the haircut.
Wow.
So that's how they found out. And they're not supportive.
That's not fun. I'm sorry. You say it with a smile. They're not supportive.
Smiling is a coping mechanism. So
Right. I get it.
but they're not supportive. My mom is trying now, but like my dad is like very much. I feel like several people have come on here and say this. He's like, "You'll always be our daughter." Blah 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 blah. Like, and I'm just like, you can stop talking now.
Like, shut up. In all
Yeah.
due respect.
Yeah, just like all due respect, like just stop talking. And my mom though, I don't know, she goes back and forth. There's sometimes where I'm like red flag. My
Mhm.
dad's just like a red flag across the board. But my mom's like been trying, so like I don't know, like and so like she'll apologize if she dead names me now. And she's just being neutral, so she's not using my name yet, but she's being like neutral. So I'm like, I'll take it. Like that's like the bar's on
Mhm.
the floor, but like at least you're hitting
Right.
the bar that's on the floor now.
Yeah.
So um so like she's just not using any pronouns or any name.
Mm,
But at least she's not harming me. So like
right.
yeah. My dad on the other hand, like dead names me every second he gets. And I'm just like I won't respond to it though.
That's like, I don't know. That's the least your dad can do is just like not use pronouns or your name. Just be like, "Hey kid."
Yeah.
That's what my dad did for like 5 years and he's just now like starting to
That's what
not
I'm
do that.
saying. Like, there's so many things he could say that, and it feels like it's in spite because, like, he used to say like, "Who goes there?" I don't know, like random little like quirky things, you know. And now it's like always the dead name, like
Oh, it's
always. And
fully
I'm like,
spite
you could
then.
use, yeah. I was like, you could use so many other things, like phrases you could try, but he's like, I can't in the name of God. I feel like I'm sinning by doing that, and I'm like, okay,
Are they religious or
very. My mom works in a church, and my dad's like the deacon at a church.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I
Oh,
mean, he doesn't
wow.
work. My dad is like an engineer, but like he is a deacon though at the church. And like I was forced to go to church like all my life, like church camps and whatnot and that jazz.
Church
Um,
camps?
yes, every summer.
Now, how how do you, like, view religion now? Has it changed your perception on
I
it?
would say a few years ago, I definitely viewed it all as negative and like in a negative connotation. I think now I don't. I think that my parents and people like my parents are using religion as an excuse to just like hate on people. Cause I mean, obviously I went to church for like a long time, against my will.
Yeah.
So like, I know like stuff that they've learned, and I'm like I feel like if anything like the Bible or whatever is saying like the exact opposite. So I don't know. I don't think that it's like awful anymore. I used to be like fuck religion and just like people who are religious and like that because like that was my whole experience. Like,
Right.
but then like at my work currently, like I'm very supported by like pretty much every single person at my work, minus like maybe give or take a few people that I'm unsure on, but like everyone else is super supportive. That's like 60 people. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so like I'm like, okay, yeah, like people can be religious and be supportive. It's just my
Yeah.
parents making a choice there. So now I'm like pretty chill about it. Now I'm just like, you
Right.
do you. As long as you're being kind to people, like
Right, and you said
believe
that
what you want to
perfectly.
believe.
You said that perfectly. Like, it's 100% a choice that they're
Mm-hmm.
not supportive because, like, I
Agreed.
have religious family too. Like, if you love somebody, and I'm not saying your parents don't love you. I know they love you, but like, it's
No, I agree.
100% a choice to be transphobic,
It definitely
like,
is
especially if
a
you're a
choice,
kid.
100%. Uh-huh. No, I know. And they're like, they would say like, we just need you to extend us a grace. And I'm like, the bar's on the floor. Like, I don't, what else am I extending? Like, I'm already like, I'm not, at the time, like, I wasn't correcting them. And like, I was just asking them to be fucking neutral. Like, that is my only ask was for them to be neutral. And they were like, it's too hard. And so I was like, okay, then like, you don't want me at Thanksgiving. Like, if you're not going to hold space for the person I am, then I'm not going to come to Thanksgiving. Like,
And how have they reacted to those boundaries that you set when you're not there for holidays and stuff?
for Thanksgiving, they kind of like, well, so my dad messaged me and was like, "Hey, dead name, your mom said you didn't want to come over for Thanksgiving," and I was like, "That's not what happened." I said that if I'd come over, that I wanted to be like respected and cared for, and like that I wanted to spend time with people who were going to hold space for me. And if y'all aren't willing to do that, then I was going to spend it with other people. So I was like, I didn't say I
Right.
didn't want to come. This is different. Um, and so then I sent them a message, right? And then they never responded back to my message. So I didn't go to Thanksgiving. And then they were peeved because the next day they both texted me, right? Like, happy Thanksgiving, love you. And I was like, I didn't respond because I was like, you
Mhm.
literally ignored my message. And also, like, it's Thanksgiving and you're choosing not to have your child there because you don't want to be neutral. Like it's not a big ask. So like that's y'all's choice that y'all made. So I don't think they weren't happy that I wasn't there, but like that was a choice they made. So I had like My friend Aaron from the Discord, he came over and we like hung out
Okay.
and had a great time.
It's all about chosen
Um,
family at the end of the day.
exactly. And then Christmas, we had like a huge conversation before Christmas because I like reached out to them. I was like, look, let's figure out how we can make sure that Christmas is enjoyable for both of us, right? Being the bigger person that I am.
Mm.
Um, and so I did that, and like we had a conversation, and my dad was like awful. Like what I said earlier, but like more. And just kept saying like, oh, I just can't because it's too hard. But like my mom, like for like the first time ever, and I think her whole life was like said something separate and different than my dad, and was actually like, I think I can do that. I can be neutral. Like, because I told them I was like, y'all can take like Christmas gifts back. Like I'm not. I don't care about the gifts. Like use my name and pronouns. That's all I care about. Like, or I won't be there. And then my mom was like, we're
Period.
not taking your gifts back. And my mom was like, I didn't write your dead name on them. And was like, I would like for you to at least come hang out with me. And so that's what I did. And like, she's making an effort. So I was like, I'm okay with that. But I looked at my dad and was like, I'm not coming for you though. Like, so like, I didn't go to Christmas on the holidays. But I did go over like the Monday before Christmas. And I went there, but yeah. So, I mean, they did good with it. I mean, they weren't like, I mean, I don't know how they actually feel about it when I'm like not there, but I was like, I don't know. I set a boundary, and like,
Mhm.
I think that's helped me a lot too in a lot of ways, like just respecting my own boundaries. So,
You go to therapy, Max?
yes, I do go to therapy. Can you
I could
tell?
tell. I could tell. You're
Thank you.
you're very good at setting boundaries. I am proud of you, and I'm sorry
Thank
that your
you.
family sucks. Like
Facts.
that's a really hard thing to go through, especially during the holidays. And I know there's probably many trans people out there, probably many who are listening that have probably
Hmm.
gone through the same thing around Christmas and
I'm
Thanksgiving and
sure there
stuff.
is.
Yeah. And
Honestly, I think, oh, talk,
no,
speak.
go ahead. I don't even know where I was going,
um,
but
I was going to say, like, honestly, I think like especially with like the holidays, like I think that sets a really big boundary because I feel like in general situations they can be like, oh, like he's just coming over less because XYZ, or like they can like put it off like excuse and stuff, you know. Like the holidays it's like, oh, he's for real, like he's not playing around. But also like not even that, but from my standpoint, like honestly, like even besides like the standpoint of like being trans too, but like also like my relationship with my family is not great for a lot of other reasons too.
Mm.
So like that said, like this was like I would say the first time I actually spent holidays with people who like made me feel comfy in general, like trans related and just overall. So like I think honestly sometimes it can be better to just be away from your family for the holidays and spend time with people who your chosen family.
I
So
think so too, 100%. Family means nothing if there's not love and respect there. You know
mm-hmm.
what I mean? And
100%.
I don't know. Yes, I think it's definitely has to be heartbreaking not spending the
Oh,
holidays with your
definitely. I'm not
family.
saying it didn't hurt.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm sure it was heartbreaking, but at the end of the day, I bet you had a better holiday not
Oh
being
yeah,
misgendered and shit.
literally spent Thanksgiving with like one of my besties, and then Christmas with my girlfriend the whole time. So that was amazing.
Period.
So yeah.
That's wild to me. You say it's mostly religion for them, right? Like mostly that's
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
I mean, because like my dad at like the end of our conversation, because I'd said something about like everyone else in my life's able to do it, but y'all, like y'all are literally like the only people.
Mm.
Like my coworkers, the kids, like a 3-year-old understood how my my name changed in pronouns within 3 days. Like,
Mhm.
like you cannot say it's that hard.
Mhm.
Um, and oh, where was I going with that? Oh, and he was like, well, we don't want to be like the rest of the world. And I was like, okay, dad, like,
Oh, you're so woke. Like, come
yeah,
on.
so yeah,
Jesus.
we want to be like the rest of the world.
It's just like wild to me because like imagine uh caring about like something that you have no proof of, a book even more than
Hmm.
your own kid. Like that's wild to me. I don't know how people navigate their lives like that, and I think it's
Yeah, I don't know.
sad. And
It is sad.
and they will 100% regret their actions one day. If they don't
I
come
agree.
around, if they don't come around, you won't be there.
And that's what I've said. I've said, like, I don't want y'all to wait so long that you've lost me by the time you come around. And I think that's my mom. I think she's understanding that because me and my dad have never been close for a lot
Mhm.
of reasons. So like, I didn't even talk to him that much anyways. But like when I set boundaries, like when my mom wasn't using my pronouns and stuff at first, or like deadnaming me a lot, or like just wasn't even trying, I like had stopped talking to her for a few weeks, and like we used to talk more often, and she noticed it, like,
Mhm.
and so I think to her that was like kind of a wake up call, like, oh shit, like I could lose him if I'm not like being respectful, or like, and it's like, yeah, you could, like, I don't want that, but like I have to protect myself first before y'all, even if like I'm like, oh, I don't want to lose this relationship, but like I have to do what's best for me at the end of the day. So
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. And you think like people who have lived longer than you and like have seen more of the world than you can understand like you're gonna do what's
mm-hmm.
best for yourself, especially when you're over the age of 18. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. And it's not like it just happened overnight either. Like,
Right. You said that you've had the haircut for a long time now and like you're, you know,
yeah,
like
like there was strides like slowly towards it to hint at them, like, like be cutting off my hair, changing my clothes, like talking to my mom about, like, I specifically told her it was trans tape for a reason. I was trying to hint, like,
right.
hey, I'm wearing fucking trans tape. Like, what does that mean? Let's use our context clues. Um, and she even said, she was like, I think I knew then, but like was just like in denial. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
It's choosing to
Um,
not see it in a way, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, at least your mom seems like she's coming around. I hope that she
yeah,
continues to and like
me too.
progresses more with it. So, how about work then? I want to talk more about the
Okay,
kids and how
I'm
they
also
handled it.
excited to talk about my work. Um, So coming out at work was honestly like a really great experience. I think that I am extremely privileged and lucky to have had the experience that I had. Everyone was super loving, accepting, encouraging. Even like, and I started there, like I worked there for 9 months using she, her pronouns and my dead name before I like had said something, which also was because like I wasn't entirely consciously aware,
Mhm.
fully at that point. And yeah, so like in the beginning, well, I guess it kind of goes back to how I got there was with Oliver, I'd mentioned earlier. Like after seeing like some representation finally in my life, I
Mhm.
was like, oh shit, like that's kind of like when I realized I was trans. Was when one of the guys started working at my work and I like saw that and was like, oh my gosh, this is possible. Like I live in Texas, but like this is possible. So I was in like February. Um, and so like over the summer, like beginning of the summer, I started talking to like some people by word of mouth, like or my people outside of work kind of knew. But like I kind of like it was bothering me at work that people were like she herring me and like that naming me, but they didn't know. So like what were they supposed to do with that information? Um I just would start kind of being like, actually, I don't use that. I just like slowly started telling people, being like, actually,
Mhm.
I don't use that like outside of here, and I'd like to like that to be here.
Mhm.
But we have a lot of people at our work, and so I was like, I need to like talk to my clinical director and be like, look, like how do I tell everybody at once, like because this is not going to work. But I was like nervous about it, obviously.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like really confident one day, and I was talking to like my work bestie, and I was like, I might do it, like I might like message her today and be like, look. And she was like, if you're feeling froggy, jump. And like, that's my favorite thing ever. And so like, I was feeling froggy. So I jumped. And so I messaged my clinical director and was like, look, like I use they, them pronouns, like, da, 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 like, and she was super supportive. Like she was like supportive of however I wanted to do it. Like if I wanted to do it by word of mouth or if I wanted to send a chat out. And I chose chat out because like it would take forever to tell 60 people by word of mouth. And that just seems really uncomfortable. I mean, it's still
Right.
uncomfortable to chat out and be like,
Yeah.
hey guys, I'm going by they and them now.
Mhm.
Bye. But I did, and everyone was like super supportive, like sent a bunch of like gifts and memes and
Oh, cool.
like emojis, like and whatnot. And then like like I think like a week later, I was like, actually, it's not they them, it's he him. Like I literally only think it was a week or two that I was like, I'm not binary. I think I just needed like a segue into it.
Mhm.
Um, I think that I didn't. It took me a few weeks to still like because I'm like that was more complicated because at this point, like I had tried out names and he him pronouns with friends outside of work and was like, okay, yes, I know that this is who I am. This is what I want. This is what makes me feel comfy. Like that's just like a harder one to broach because like the kids can hear everyone just like saying my dead name with like no pronouns before it, basically is what they were doing. So like they weren't saying Miss or Mister because like they them so on and so forth. But like changing my name and like what's before my name and stuff, like I didn't know like how that was going to go down with parents, with kids, and that stressed me out. And so I waited a little bit, and then I finally was like, I can't do this anymore, like I cannot hear this anymore, like. And so I like pulled a meeting with my clinical director and my supervisor and was like, look, I use Max outside of work, I use he him outside of work, like I would like that to move into the workplace. That's what makes me feel comfy, it's who I am. And they were really supportive, and I was just like, I just don't know how that looks with parents and kids. My clinical director was super supportive. She like gave some guidance on like how it would go. Like, so how it went was like there's me. I work on a like team with like 7 other technicians, therapists, and then there's like the BCBA, which is like my supervisor, and then there's a clinical director. So my BCBA is the one, she does like family guidances with parents and stuff like that. I'm not in those because I'm not qualified for that. I work with the kids directly though. And so she would have to be the one to talk to the parents. And they were like, you can sit in if you want. And I was like, no, like that's just like, because the way I view it is like if a new person started there, they wouldn't sit in for you to tell them, just for you to be like, this and so, their name is this. Like, that would be weird. So it would be weird for me to just come in randomly and sit in there and be like, it would just kind of be me on display. Like, it's just weird.
Right.
And so they're like, that's totally fine. You don't have to do that. And so basically, as she had family guidance with his parents, like parents were informed over like, it was supposed to be a 2-week period. It lasted like a month and a half. It lasted a little bit longer than it should have, to be honest. But to tell all of the parents, like seven parents. And once all of the parents knew, then it was like, okay, everyone at work can call you this now. Because if my coworkers were all calling me Max and he, him, Mr. Max, whatever. And then like maybe like 2 of my kids know, so they are, but then the other 3 don't know. And it's just, that'd be confusing for like the kids specifically.
Yeah,
and like also parents if they didn't know yet. So we had to wait till everyone knew. And once all the parents knew, they just like came in the next day. So like that following Monday, after like that month long period or whatever, like my first kiddo came in and the parent was like, have a good morning with Max. Like, and like the kid heard it, and the kid kind of looked at me, the specific kid, and he was just like, what? And like, but then like he was super chill about it. And then like all of my kids were, I mean, they just learned by hearing. So like, you know, people would be like, have a good morning with Max, or like Mr. Max is your next teacher. They see my name, like we have a bulletin board in the front, and it has like our faces and our names, and they could see it says Max there, it says Max on the schedule, like and so they just heard it. And honestly, like they took it so well. Like I was not giving them enough credit beforehand when I was like worried about like if it was gonna be too much for them or too hard or like whatever, and it really wasn't.
I definitely get the fear though. Like in today's climate, you know, to talk about trans people
literally.
and kids, like I definitely I get why you were scared to do it, but
Yeah.
and you know, Nate and I talked about it in his episode because he works with kids too, and he was like, kids don't care, and they'll get it if you're just straight with them, like just tell it how it
Facts.
is, and give them a fist bump and move on, like.
That's exactly what I did. So like so I work with like autistic kids. So I work with them one-on-one. So I work with like various ages. So like my youngest was 3 and the oldest was 7. And also like my concern was like ethics. Like how do I explain this to parents or kids without like crossing a boundary? Because like HIPAA and like it is a therapeutic setting and like all that jazz. And also like Texas does have laws around like what you can say around certain stuff in schools. And like we're technically considered a medical setting, not a school, but still like it is a school type setting. And so that was a concern. So like my oldest kid, like how I broached it, because like the pronouns, like I feel like I wouldn't have to broach as much, but like honestly, like one of my kids called me he beforehand half the time anyway. So like we would be reading a book and there'd be like a guy with curly hair, brown hair or something, and he'd be like, that's you. And I was like, thanks.
Yeah, that's
and so the oldest kids, I would say like I explained maybe a little bit more. Like all I did was like my oldest, I was like, he's 7, and I was like, hey, like I want to talk to you about something. And he was like, okay, like cool. And so like he comes sits over by me, and I was just like, hey, so like my name's like Mr. Max now. And he was like, are you picking on me? Like thinking like I was pulling a joke or something. I was like, no, I'm serious. And I just like, I showed him like our like schedule or whatever, and it said like Max on it. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, hi, Max, I like your name. And I was like, I will cry right now. Like, and it was so wholesome. And he was so excited, like all session. He just kept calling me Mr. Max. Like, a lot of my kids don't use people's names and sentences and stuff, like in general, like that's part of why they're there. Like, but like he was like using Mr. Max like all the time because he just really liked it and he thought it was so cute. And like I'm like, I feel like some of my kids like my name as much as I do. Like, and that's just like wholesome.
I'm
But
a
like
cry.
it was
Like
I
that's
know.
cute
And then
as
like
fuck.
and then it gets cuter because like 2 months later, I was like playing robots with him on the floor or something, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I see it now!" It was like all up in my face, and I was like, what do you see? Like I thought I had food on my face or something, and then he was like, "Your mustache, you're a real boy," and I was like dying. It was so funny. He was like, you are a boy," and I was like, "Yeah, I am." Thanks for the confirmation.
Oh,
But
that's
it was
so
so cute,
freaking pure. Like because
right?
kid probably has no idea like how
No.
testosterone or hormones work. Like they don't know about any of that. They saw a boy and they said it out loud. That's
Yeah. And like his dad has like a little mustache. So I feel like he was like probably beforehand he was like, "Where's your mustache though?" Like
where is that?
like you're
I don't
missing
see
something. Like
it.
I know. Could you imagine? He totally would have like said something like that too. Um and so that was like the cutest thing ever. But even like my another kiddo that I work with that's 5, he was like he's not a fan of change, which neither am I. So like valid. And he like really likes letters and stuff like that. And he was like obsessed with my name like before I changed it too. And so I was a little worried that he was like maybe not gonna love that I was changing my name. And he loved it so much. Like he made me a bracelet. Hold on, I'm wearing it right now. Um, that says Max on it. And like he just like writes my name down all the time because he just thinks it's such a cool name. Like every time he sees me in the hallway, he's like, "Hi, Mr. Max. Hi, Max. Hi, Mr. Max." It makes me so happy. But yeah, he made me that bracelet, and like his mom had to help him make the bracelet, and all the parents were like, that I know of, none of them have been like problematic. Like from my few like I only talk to them when I drop the kids off or pick them up. But when I do talk to them, they're like, they use my pronouns, they use my name, like they haven't changed how they talk to me, or anything. So like honestly, like they all feel pretty supportive. I'm sure there's got to be at least like one parent that doesn't agree because like we live in Texas, like come on. But they at least don't act like it.
Period. But like even
So
if they have a problem with it, they're not like they're clearly not
no,
doing
that's
anything
what I'm saying.
about it, and
They're
that's all you can
respecting
ask
me.
for. Yeah, that's all you can ask for at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Like you don't have to agree with my choices, I guess, but it's not a choice. But like
Yeah.
you don't have to agree with my choices.
Yeah.
Just don't be fucking rude. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Um and even a 3-year-old, like there was a 3-year-old on our team that I didn't work with as much. But she got my name after like 3 days of hearing people say my name. So like I'm just like when people are like it's too hard, like the longest, like I would say the kid I just talked about was 5, like slipped up and said like the dead name a few times, which I didn't. Obviously, I'm not out here correcting kids. Like, and I told parents that too. Whenever like it did change, I was like, I'm not gonna be like correcting your kid if they're like fucking it up. Like I'm like I don't care. Like that's not like it's the least of my concerns.
Right.
So like, but none of them did. Like he did a few times and then he just like fixed it himself. He was like, wait, no, that's not right. You know, like the 3-year-old. I remember like after like 3 days, she looked at me and she was like gonna ask me for help, and she was like pause, and she like looked at me and she was like, Max, can you help? Like she was like thinking really hard, and it was cute. But like when people say it's too hard, I'm like, I work with kids and I had a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and they were all able to like get along with the change. There wasn't in-depth conversations. I think one of my kids that asked a lot of questions was like, but why? And I was just like, that's just my name now. Like there is no why. Like because I can't like get into like, I'm not gonna
Right.
be like, well, I'm trans and I'm a boy and I don't like this. Like
Yeah.
but like, yeah, so
And that's how it goes. Like, I wish the world could listen in, like the entire world could
uh-huh.
listen into this conversation right now and realize that is the extent of like what trans people what trans people tell kids about them
Exactly.
being
Like it's
trans.
not I'm not like, yeah, so like I hate my chest and I want to get like bottom surgery or top surgery or like
Yeah.
I'm like I'm on hormones, I take
Do
testosterone.
you want some? Like,
Yeah, exactly. I'm not like I'm not like, hey, like bud, do you think you're a boy or do you think you're a girl? Like that's not a conversation that is happening. Um
absolutely wild that people think that's what we're out here doing.
I know. Like no, that's not what's going on.
I'm gonna take your kid
Couldn't be farther from the truth.
into a janitor's closet and stick them with a testosterone needle. That's my whole plan. That's what I want to
Stop.
do. Like, what the fuck? Like,
No. No. Like literally no. Why do people think this way?
I'm very glad that work at least went very well for you.
I
As
agree.
a
I think
person.
it made a big difference.
Yeah, I think what happened with your family, what is happening with your family, is being made up for with the kids at work.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, I think that's really nice.
100%. I think it makes a huge difference because I have like that support and like people around me. Like I've gotten on like Bumble BFF because of you, or like other apps and stuff, and have found like people that are like trans around me too that I can talk to in that in the Discord, obviously.
Yeah, it's really important.
So
It's
it
extremely
really
important.
is. It
Uh,
makes a big difference.
it does. Now I want to talk about a little because you mentioned in the survey that you took, which I appreciate you taking. Thank you very much. Um, that I think it was something along the lines of how you maybe didn't know you were trans until a little bit later in life, and how you had no
Hmm.
inkling like at all, right? Until you
Yeah,
did. Do you want to talk about
until I
that a
knew.
little bit?
Yeah. Um, So I guess trigger warning. Then we should add a trigger warning there.
Trigger warning.
Because that gets into like talk of trauma and whatnot. So I feel like I've heard the narrative of like I realized I was trans after I went through trauma, quite often,
Right.
um, and I think that is 100% valid because you learn a lot after you go through trauma that you do and don't want to learn. However, I think that there are people on the wrong side of history, that take that out of context and are like, so you're just trans because you went through trauma
Mhm.
and it's really just a mental illness. And like, I think that is 100% not what these people are trying to say. I think that they're saying that they learned something about themselves because of something really hard that they went through, which a lot of people learn a
Yeah.
lot about themselves when they go through difficult things.
Which
Yeah.
is a
So like
thing
it's
outside of being trans. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Are you there?
Um, and so that's obviously fucked. And I think my trauma is the opposite experience. So like I feel like my trauma was why I didn't realize I was trans for so long.
Mm.
Um, like like I said, I feel like a lot of people have said the opposite, but for me, it's like why. Like I very strongly feel like it was why I didn't realize I was trans for so long because I was abused by cis white men for like a really long time in a lot of different ways. For like most of my life, I would say. Like I'm 23, so like half of that I was being abused by cis white men. So it's a long time.
That is a long time.
And when you were living in fight or flight mode like that, you don't have time to think about gender identity, friendships, relationships. I mean, anything. Like, I mean, I didn't even start like really making friends, like minus like one or two until after I got out of my parents' house. So like even that like was something I had to learn. So like outside of transness, like there's other things too, but if I can't even learn how to make friends. Like I'm not thinking about my gender identity. Like there's no space for that.
Mhm.
Like I was just focusing on like living. So like like literally the bare minimum.
On breathing, yeah.
Yeah, like when you're living in fear like that, it's just debilitating. It wasn't until after I moved out of my parents' house that I started to get like my feet back on the ground and started to like kind
Mhm.
of like think about things, but not like a whole lot yet.
Mhm.
Um, I put a lot of pressure on myself. I feel like a lot of times like on why I didn't know sooner. And I think that is kind of like where shame comes in with everything. Like asking myself questions like, am I a guy? Because like I love when people use he, him pronouns. Like a specific memory that stands out for me is like being at the grocery store and like people using he, him, or assuming he, him pronouns, and me being like big old happy face, like so excited about it, and then like calling my friends and being like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
they just called me he, and then they're like, why is that exciting? Like, and I was just like, oh, we're not gonna talk about it. So like there was signs and stuff like that, but then it would always come back to, but I can't be like them. So like I could not disconnect the two of like, if I'm a guy, that makes me like them. So like then I was just like, I would just shut it down and be like, nope, like that can't be me. And like I couldn't like live with like the thought of being like them. So I was just like, I just can't be trans then. And like to go back to like, if you're being abused by men and then like there's like how you can't like you can only compartmentalize so much as a child or like as a teenager or even as a young adult, but like you can only compartmentalize so much. Like how do you separate those two? And I feel like I've even heard like trans men talk about this that like haven't been through trauma, like just in general, like cis men suck, like like so like, but especially like going through that type of situation, you like in my head, like I did not have like abuse and men separated, like they were like congruent. So like I was like, if I'm a guy, then that makes me an abuser. Like in my head, like I feel like that's where my train of thought was. So I was like, I can't be like that. Like I just can't. And I hadn't had like any representation of like a good ass guy in my life. Like even at school, like I was bullied. I went home, my dad wasn't great. My extended families weren't great either. Like, so I just like, I didn't feel like there was anyone in my life that I looked at that was a guy and I was like, yeah, I look up to that. So like I just feel like there's no way I could have known. And I think it wasn't until I started to meet some guys that like weren't absolutely awful that I was like, oh, maybe that means something. And I think I had to work a lot in therapy. You asked earlier if I was in therapy. I'm like, yes, I have been for a long time. It wasn't until I started to work a lot in therapy that I eventually started to realize that being a guy doesn't mean I'm like them at all. I eventually started to realize that like I am my own guy and that I'm just like, I'm not who they are. Like that doesn't make me like them. And something like my therapist has said to me, like after I'd set all these boundaries and like had set all these boundaries with like this year with my family related to like being trans, but also related to the trauma too, was like that kid I met. This is something that I feel like made me go like, oh my gosh, you're right. And like made me like destigmatize things more. But she was like, the kid I met at the center all those years ago is so proud and cared for by the and nurtured by the man you are today. That kid I met has always deserved the type of safety you're providing today. And she's right. Like, and I think that as trans people, often we give a lot of credit to things that have helped us through our journey. Like we give a lot of credit to top surgery and bottom surgery and binders and hormones and stuff like that. And like, yes, those things are life-saving gender affirming care. But at the end of the day, we're the ones who got ourselves there. Nobody else did that. So I think I think that we all put a lot of credit into that. And I think we need to put more credit into ourselves because like you don't have to have all of that to be a guy. Like you don't need all of that to be a guy. Like if you say you're a guy, you're a guy. And I think that kind of pulls into the trauma is like I was associating a guy with being misogynistic, with being mean, with being abusive, with being hurtful, with being cold. And once I was able to like unestablish that, I was like, oh wow, like I am a guy and like that's okay and that doesn't mean I'm like them and like that's safe because like I said, there was like things like looking back now as a kid that I'm like, okay, like I did cut all my hair off. When I was a kid, like I just took scissors and just cut it all off. Like, and like made a comment of like wanting to be a boy. Like, I mean, like I did things like that, but like I didn't like process in that moment that like, oh, that might be a sign that like I'm trans. And like I didn't have any awareness of what being trans was either, but like
Mm-hmm.
there was just no room for me to realize that. And like if you've gone through that, I think it makes sense because like why would you want to be like that? Like that's not a role model you look up to,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No,
So
100%. I agree with you. I mean, like I relate to you. I guess I mean, like until the age of 16, I didn't know that I was trans. I had no like inkling or anything. There was things that happened, obviously, that I've talked about that I should have known, but I didn't.
mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that hearing other trans guys or trans women's stories about how they always knew from the age of like 3, and that's a lot of people's
Mm-hmm.
story. A lot of people say that they
It
knew. I
is.
can imagine, and even sometimes I don't know. I go back and forth on if I really knew or not. I don't think I really knew, but in the back of my head, I knew. I don't know.
Subconscious and conscious,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I can imagine that it can be it could bring shame to your own transition when you think there's one way to be trans. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like for a long time I was like, you can't transition unless you know for sure. Like, or you can't transition, which I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't know before you transition, but I'm saying because there's some things you can't go back from. But I mean, like, I think I was putting too much thought into like what other people thought though, and like, or like who other people were. And I think that kind of goes into the song I share later. But like, I had to ask myself, who do you think you are? Like, because I was focusing on too much. Like I was looking at all the other men in my life and was like, I don't want to be like that though. Like, no, like, but I was like, but I am a guy, but like, I don't want to be like that. Like it was a back and forth, like battle with myself. It's like the devil and the angel on my shoulder. Okay.
Right.
Um, and I had to be like, who do you think you are? And I'm like, I know I'm a guy. And then it was like, okay, so you know you're a guy. That doesn't mean you're that guy. Like I had to separate those two.
You have to relearn who you are, kind of,
Exactly.
and relearn what a man is. And
Yeah. Because
that's
that is not a man.
yeah, no, and that's a very hard thing to do, I think, with society.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even I mean, it is. It's 100% how typically how cis men are and what they do and how they
Mm-hmm.
treat women and all those things. It's that, but it's also how society views them for those actions. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Definitely.
and I think I don't know. I think every trans guy has to reevaluate what being a man is because of how
Mm-hmm.
society views men. And like for me, I think for a long time, throughout my transition, this is gonna be a weird sentence, but I defined, and I hated this. It made me really dysphoric, but I defined a man as, genitals, and
Mm-hmm.
that hurt my transition in so many ways until I had to relearn that, okay, what is a man? Matt Walsh, what does being a man mean
Yeah.
to you? But yeah, I had to relearn that, and as soon as you realize that there's no I don't know what the word is, but, like, there's no actual way to be a man. Everybody is their own fucking person. There's no one way to be a woman. There's no one way to be a
Mm-hmm.
man, and, like and I hear
Exactly.
you. Like, if you were surrounded by abusive men your entire life, I couldn't imagine, and I know I say this all the time, guys, but my god, that is how you know the shit is not a choice. Like
Yes.
yeah, like
Literally. Like
'cause I hear you,
um
like, why would you want to be like any of those men in your life, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't choose
exactly.
this, you just know you are,
Um
and you're a better man, you know what I
thank
mean?
you. I agree. um no, definitely. I was gonna say something and I'm trying to remember what it was now off
Welcome
of what you had just said, but I don't remember.
it's okay, welcome to my
That's
life.
unfortunate. This is my life every day. If I had $1 for every time I said I forgot or what was I gonna say, I would be like a rich guy. Like seriously, it's so often.
Honestly, I was gonna say, dude, you should have your own podcast. Like, you are with it, bro, you get it.
I'm glad because I was a little worried.
No, dude, you're very good at, like giving a language to your feelings and expressing yourself and knowing.
It's therapy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably the years of therapy.
It's the therapy. It really is. It was around like you had said like the shame or like I guess that's what it was. It was like I was like I can't transition while I am still viewing men in this light, I guess. Like which I mean I still say all the time like fuck cis men suck. Like yes, but like on a deeper level, I even though it's true, but like I can't think about it too often. Like I mean I think about it in like an advocating type of way, yes, but like deep in my soul, like where I used to think about it, like how I used to think about it, I think I was like, I can't transition and still view all men like this because if I do, I'm viewing myself in that way. And like, if I'm viewing myself in that way, then like, there's an issue there. Like, I can't view myself as like a misogynistic, like abusive person. Like, and that's like how I was viewing all men. So I was like, I can't say I'm a guy and view all men like that, even though a lot of men are like that. But like,
Yeah. I
yeah.
say fuck cis men. I hate cis men all the time on this
Yeah.
podcast, and I'm
Same.
like,
I know.
I'm like,
I do
somebody's
too.
gonna come for me with that one day. Like somebody's gonna get mad at me for saying that one day, and like, I don't
Nah.
know. I don't think I would care very much if somebody did say something because, like,
You're
sorry,
not
but
wrong.
they like out of everybody on planet Earth, like they are the
Yeah.
problem. Like, I
Do
don't know what you want me to
do a
do here,
survey.
right? Yeah,
Do a
like,
survey.
I mean, it's just look when I say fuck cis men, I am fully aware that it is not all cis men. I
Yes.
I have,
But there's a but.
but I mean, I don't know. I think a cis man who knows that cis men are the problem is the right cis man. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes, 100%. Like, and able to, even as a trans man, being able to realize your privilege too, because that's the thing too, is like, especially once you start to pass and stuff, there is a privilege to that. There is more of a sense of safety when you're walking outside. And I think there's an obligation on our side as people who do have the life experience of an AFAB person, because like, or that's how I view it, as like, I do still have those life experiences. I realize not everyone like wants to think about that, and that's totally fine. Like, it's your life.
mhm,
But like, that is still like, I still have those experiences. So like when I'm outside, like walking out of the grocery store and it's dark outside and I see that there's a girl that looks pretty anxious right now because like I'm walking behind her, I switch sides. It's not that hard. Like,
mhm,
you know, like you can think about those things for 5 seconds and think about the people around you and how you can make them feel more comfortable. Like, so I feel like as trans men, it's still like our responsibility to do that, make those choices too, because we know we have that lived experience. I mean, depending on when you transition, maybe, but like, for me, I you know, I have that lived experience. I know what that's like.
sure. Yeah.
So
No, that's a good point. I do feel like that's a good way to put it. I've always felt that, but I feel like I couldn't
hmm
put it to words that like I feel like I have a responsibility to be a better man than what I've
hmm
seen in society and women
100%.
in the
And I
news.
think we do because
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think we set like the example for men at this point because like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, the bar's pretty low, so.
yeah, the bar it really is. So
Okay, so we're gonna take a hard turn here in this
I was
episode.
about to say, where are we turning to now, Cody?
I don't really know how to transition into this topic in a smooth way, so I'm just gonna call it as it is. We're making a hard turn right now. Trigger warning. Um, in your survey, you talked a lot about how eating disorders and dysmorphia are kind of a common theme within trans people. And I
hmm
found that to be really interesting because I don't think I ever knew that. I don't understand it because I haven't struggled with it myself, and therefore
hmm
I feel like I can't talk about it and bring knowledge to it. And you said that you may have some knowledge on it, so if you don't mind, if you want to share and educate me a little and anybody
hmm
listening on that subject, that would be great. But also, again, trigger warning and hard left turn in the
Hard
episode.
left turn.
But yeah, if you want to do that,
Just
that would
straight
be great.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well, first of all, I want to say I'm like speaking from personal experience. I'm not a therapist or a dietitian or like a trained professional. So I'm speaking from personal experience. And I mean, I'll talk some about like general experiences I've heard other people say, because like I do think my experience is a little bit different in some ways. So I kind of want to validate that. But speaking from experience, like I've struggled with an eating disorder for like a good portion of like my high school, young adult years. But it was at its worst in 2020. I was honestly on like my deathbed. I had struggled with anorexia, which is like a restrictive food intake disorder. So like not eating enough. Not eating enough, but also like it is like more categorized by like how you view your body. And like body dysmorphia is like associated with that. And it had gotten really bad to a point where I had to like seek help from like a treatment center because like I needed to get my weight up and I couldn't do that on my own. Um, and after I left there, like that was a really great experience. I think that was honestly like a first time that I had also met some guys that were actually like good, decent human beings, like the kind of men that were like cis men suck. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow. Like, and so I think that kind of ties into what we talked about earlier too. But I think I was so blindsided by my eating disorder and by my trauma that I just was not aware that like my hatred towards my body was related to being trans. And honestly, I wasn't even in 2020, I wasn't educated enough on transness. And so like, cause even then, like the people that I like quote unquote aspired to be in my head were men. But I just didn't process it. I wasn't like, you know, I do want to look like these men. Maybe that has something to do with this.
Yeah.
So while I was in treatment, or after I left treatment, I was doing really good at staying on track and stuff. Like I was eating just enough to like maintain a healthy weight. But I still had a really negative connotation on my body. I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. Like I was like, I'm in therapy. I'm trying to do like positive things for myself and like affirm myself in my body and whatnot. But I was working on myself under the connotation or assumption that I had body dysmorphia. And body dysmorphia is different from gender dysphoria, which I wasn't aware what gender dysphoria is. And I think it wasn't talked about as much then, or at least where I was unaware of it. I honestly, I feel like this is silly, but I feel like TikTok has educated me on a lot. um, to be honest, like,
It sounds silly, but like it's true. Like me too. I learned so
yeah,
much more on TikTok than I ever did in school. Just
yeah.
saying.
So
Yeah.
like, I kind of get into that in a little bit, but like, I just like I was working on myself under the assumption that like I just hated my chest and like my stomach and like my thighs and my arms, like but specifically like the parts about them that made me look feminine in my eyes. Like, but I wasn't connecting those pieces. So I was just like, I just have body dysmorphia and this fucking sucks and like nothing seems to be getting better. And like body dysmorphia, for like those who don't know, like the like technical term for it is like being extremely preoccupied with a perceived flaw in your appearance that others can't see or like that don't appear to others. So like let's say like maybe you're stick thin, but like and other people see that, but to you you might think you're overweight. Like would just be an example. Or like maybe you think that your thighs are huge, but like in reality they're not. Would just be like an example of body dysmorphia. Whereas like the technical term for gender dysphoria, which we all kind of know, is like distress that occurs from incongruence between like biological sex characteristics and your gender identity. So like I personally, like my experience is that I wasn't aware of what gender dysphoria was. I thought I had just had an, I say just, eating disorders are super serious no matter whether or not you're trans. But like I thought I just had an eating disorder. I didn't know that like my transness was connected to it or like that I was even trans, to be frank. So like even though like I was doing really good with my eating, I was still struggling with it up until like February of 2023. I just wouldn't call it an eating disorder anymore at that point. I would have said it was like disordered eating. Like I was still engaging in like unhealthy habits and stuff, but I wasn't underweight, I wasn't dying. It wasn't like constantly on my mind. But it was still a big problem. And I like it wasn't until like February, I would say, kind of like when I realized I was trans, basically, when in my head I was like no longer subconsciously, like I had been subconsciously thinking about it for a while, but when I was consciously like, yes, I'm trans, what are we gonna do about it? Like, was when I was like, it just clicked in my head, and I was like, oh shit, that's why I have these eating issues. Like when I was like in my head, what was going on in my head when I was like engaging in these behaviors and like not eating enough and working out too much was like I wanted my chest to be smaller but like no matter how small I got, it wasn't gonna fucking disappear. Like, I mean, your body doesn't work like that. Like, I might have gotten close, but like
Mm.
it's not gonna fix it. You know, like you can't get rid of all those things by just not eating. But like I just thought like if I just keep going, then eventually it'll be gone. And then by that point, by the time I got there, I was just sucked into like the consistency of like eating disordered behaviors, like if that makes sense. And so when I realized that, it was like a flip switch. I was like, I remember I was like looking in a mirror and I was like, holy shit, like all of the things I've struggled with my eating are around like the feminine parts of me. Like I remember like being a teenager and being like, oh, like mom, does this shirt like extenuate my chest? Like, and just being like this number like all the time, right? Which I feel like we all relate to, right? Um, and being like, what's going on right now? And I don't know. Like I don't know why I didn't process it then. Like why I wasn't like, dude, it's literally your chest. Like, you
Mm.
know, like
Yeah.
why do you have such a big issue with this, right?
Right.
Um, and like my hips, it was where like you have curves, which is like more feminine. Like, and I like just was looking in the mirror and I was like, oh my gosh, like all of the things that I like have struggled with my like eating disorder were related to gender dysphoria. It wasn't body dysmorphia, which for people it can be both. Like there are plenty of trans people I know that have both body dysmorphia and gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
For me though, once I realized I was trans, it was like a flip switch. Like I well, once I started hormones, I guess. I mean, I still struggled with my eating some, but once I started hormones, like I haven't had a single like disordered eating thought. I haven't had like any like I haven't engaged in anything that's unhealthy for my body since starting hormones, which is not everyone's experience, and I will speak on that some in a little bit. But um, I just think it's crazy, and I think that it's not spoken about enough in schools, in eating disorder centers, and also like that's the thing too is if you do know you're trans and you have an eating disorder, which is like a common occurrence, then like it's hard to like depending on where you're at like to find somewhere that is like going to be gender affirming treatment. Like is this place going to be accepting, and if it's not, then a lot of people don't seek out treatment because it's just going to make their eating disorder worse if they go somewhere that's not accepting. So
Mm-hmm.
there's also like accessibility that's like um respectful, I guess. So that's an issue too, but I honestly think where I went like they would have been accepting, but I just didn't know then. But I've heard a lot of AFAB and like trans and non-binary people talk about like previous struggles with eating disorders, and it often revolves around like changing the parts of your body that you don't like, right? Which adds
Mm.
up with like gender dysphoria. Um,
Right.
and I think that it just goes to show how important it is. Let's talk about it more because if gender dysphoria was talked about more, if I had realized that I had gender dysphoria in 2020 or even before that, I don't think that my eating disorder would have gotten as bad as it did. I think that we could have gotten like a handle on it. And like I said, I did almost die. Like my heart stopped. It was not fun.
Damn, dude, I'm sorry.
So like, yeah.
It must have been really
And
scary.
it was. And so like, I think like that could have been prevented. And I think there's a lot of people out there that still really struggle with eating disorders and are trans, and like that could have you could have prevented getting into that cycle. Getting
Right.
out of the cycle is a really hard process from a trans relation, and just even if you're not trans. So like I think in schools like how important it could be for them to talk more about gender dysphoria and what that is, and for kids to be educated on that about themselves, or like if they don't struggle with it then that's fine, but just be educated on it, and for like clinicians to be more educated on it, because like how much more help could I have had in treatment than if they had known like, oh, like, hey, this might actually be gender dysphoria, not body dysmorphia. Like that makes a big difference in how you'd go about treatment, because it's not that I just hated my body because of like an ideal that I had in my head or something. It was because it wasn't the right body. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and um, a lot of people, so like I said earlier, that my experience is that once I started hormones that like my thoughts went away thus far at least on it. That is not I wouldn't say that's a common experience. I think a lot of people it might even get worse. And that from what I've seen people talk about and stuff, because it's like you can, especially with like in terms of, I've heard a lot about in terms of like top dysphoria. You know, if you lose weight, you can lose weight there. And so I feel like that's a common occurrence. And I feel like if gender hormone care was more accessible, obviously, like that's not a surprise, but if it was more accessible, then um, maybe people would like not feel the need to engage in like eating disorder stuff
Mm,
as much, or like wouldn't struggle with that as much, or would be able to get help with it easier because they'd have access to that. They wouldn't feel like they have to do these things that harm themselves so that they can feel better about their body.
mhm.
And I think that's pretty fucked. And are you gonna say something?
I am thinking about how when you start testosterone,
Mm-hmm.
you get hungry a lot and it
Mm-hmm.
changes your eating habits a lot.
It does.
Do you think that helped you or harmed you? And do you think maybe it helps or harms other people who start testosterone who have an
I
eating disorder?
think I will say, like, I did have a lot of anxiety about it when I first started testosterone. When I started getting hungry, at least, I was like, oh my God, I'm eating so much food. But also, I had stopped. So I have ADHD. I literally have like three fidget toys I've been like
Dude, it's totally
fucking with
fine.
the whole time.
It's totally
Um,
fine. Last episode, I was squeezing one so hard that it popped all over me during the episode. So,
felt. Yeah, I dropped one on the ground earlier, but it's fine. I was like, I'll just grab the other ones I brought over. Um, anyway, so like I have ADHD, and I was also on ADHD meds prior to starting testosterone, and I actually had to stop them when I started testosterone because the two together were making my blood pressure too high.
Mm,
And so that ADHD meds suppress your appetite is just a side effect. Fun fact. So I stopped that and I started testosterone at the same time. So I was really hungry. Like I was actually probably under eating, like, but not intentionally, like prior to starting testosterone.
mm,
Just because like I have a hard time telling when my body's hungry. It's an ADHD thing.
mm,
And so I just like am not super connected to my body. And so when I started testosterone, like between both of those, I was so hungry. Like I was eating like so much more. Like I can't even put it into perspective how much more I was eating. But that was stressful for me at first, or anxiety provoking, because I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to gain a bunch of weight? And like those thoughts kind of popped back because even though like at the end of the day, I do think my eating disorder was like very tied into my transness and the fact that I wasn't addressing it for so long, rather I realized it subconsciously or not.
mhm,
Once I fell into the eating disorder, it was a mixture of the trans related things and also just like the obsessive factors around like eating. Like you just become obsessed with it and then it's like you can't do anything about it. Like
mm,
or you feel like you can't do anything about it. And so I was pretty stressed. I was pretty anxious, and I would imagine that would be a lot of people's experiences if they struggled with eating beforehand.
mhm,
Um, I think that it helped too, though, because which I mean that might be that, and it might also be like the fact that I was injected with such a high dose. But like I have experienced like some body fat redistribution, not like a lot, but I have experienced some, and I think that has helped a lot too because like my disordered thoughts were around like obviously like the more parts of me that I viewed as like feminine. Um, but yeah, I think that that definitely played a part in it because I was like,
mm.
why am I eating so much? Like that's
Yeah.
scary. Like,
And testosterone
um,
makes you gain weight. Like,
it does, and it does, and I saw that, and I think I had to like, I did have to work some on myself and be like, it's just a fucking number, and like. Also, like I did know going into it, like that might happen. I told myself that, and I gained like 10 pounds. I think after I started testosterone, I haven't gained anything since then. And I like honestly, I love my body, so I'm like, I'm vibing.
period, man.
Um, yes. So like, I love that for me. So like, I have thankfully had a good experience. I want to say like that might not. I know that's not everybody's experience. I've had like friends that I've talked to on this that haven't had that experience. And like to put in perspective too, because like earlier you said like you don't know much on it. Um, I like brought up some statistics too. So like NEDA is like the National Eating Disorder Association.
Mhm,
Um, and they got together with the Trevor Project, which I'm sure you're familiar with, probably,
mhm,
and to do a national assessment amongst like LGBTQ plus youth and young adults. So like 13 to 24, I think was the age range that they did. And the studies reported that 71% of transgender respondents who identify, I don't know why they add the identified as straight, because I don't know why it's relevant, but they're like 71% of transgender respondents who identified as straight have been diagnosed with an eating disorder. 71%.
That is
Um,
wild.
and that's like from one assessment, of course. Like it's not like the whole world engaged in that assessment, but 71% of the respondents that did do it, yeah, it's wild. And with anorexia being the most common in the majority. So anorexia is like restrictive food intake disorder. And to add on to that, the majority, they didn't give a statistic for this part, but the majority of those was trans men and non-binary individuals.
Mm.
And like, I don't think that surprises me because I've seen a lot talked about it. And that's what I'm mostly speaking on, because I can't speak on like the trans woman experience because
Right.
I'm not a trans woman. So I wouldn't want to miseducate.
Mhm.
But I think it says a lot about how much pain that trans individuals go through because they don't have access to gender affirming care or aren't aware of what gender dysphoria is.
Yeah, and it's not talked about.
71%.
It's
No,
not,
and
yeah.
it's not talked about.
I never knew that. I've never thought about that. That is news to me. And like from someone who hasn't experienced that kind of pain, I cuz I gained weight, you know, after starting testosterone, and I never had an eating disorder. I never like struggled
Mm-hmm.
with my weight. I didn't have dysmorphia, I don't think. Um And when I started gaining weight on testosterone, I joke about it a lot, but, like, it's not easy to see your body change like that, and for me to have a hard time with that, and to think of somebody who has an eating disorder and has to go through all
Mm-hmm.
that pain, that is, like that's some real shit, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's
Definitely. And like I said, I don't feel like my experience is the common experience. I think a lot of people still struggle with it after like starting testosterone or whatever hormones are starting or aren't starting if they're just transitioning in general. Like obviously you don't have to medically transition to transition. Um, so like I feel like a lot of people, like I don't know, on TikTok, on YouTube, like I've seen people talk about it and like it still be a continuous struggle with them until they're able to get like further gender affirming care, like top surgery or whatever. It's like top surgery is a big one I see. Or
Mhm.
start hormones and have body fat redistribution. And so like, some of these people still continue to struggle with it for years, even after the realization, because they can't cope with it. And I think it's not fair.
Yeah, and, like,
Like we just shouldn't have to, like, I feel like it should be so much more accessible. I feel like it shouldn't have to cost as much as it does, because it's literally like a necessity to life. It is no different than mental, like, which I don't like connecting it to mental health because people take that out of context, but like
Mhm.
it's similar. Okay, look, like the way it connects to mental health is the suicide rate. Like I don't have where I got the statistics from, so don't shoot me. But like I know, like statistically speaking, like I think it was last year, like 75% of trans people thought of suicide or that were in a survey or attempted. So like that's a big ass number.
Mhm.
So like if you could do something to prevent that, wouldn't you? Like why wouldn't you?
And a lot of people think that the answer is not to give gender affirming care, but it's like conversion therapy, where it's like that's
Which is just wild to me.
yeah.
Like, how do you think that's gonna help anybody, anyone?
This is why gender affirming care is
Literally so
important.
important.
Yeah. And
Literally.
and not only gender affirming care, but just fucking talking about shit like this. You know what
Exactly.
I mean?
Just talking about it, letting people be aware. Because if I had known sooner, which I'm not saying if I was a teenager and I found out that I could have done jack shit about it, because I literally couldn't have, not in my parents' house. But like, at least if I'd known about it, I could have known that the second I moved out, I could have started making like those changes or like adjustments or like whatever, which I don't regret. Like,
Mhm.
honestly, like, I don't regret my experiences that I have been through or how long it took me to realize I was trans. Like, would my life have been a hell of a lot easier? Like, obviously 100%. But I think someone said this on here like a while back. Like, I'm thankful for being trans. I think that I have like the experiences that I do for a reason. I think that maybe my story helps somebody, and I think that makes everything worth it.
100%. Because you know what? At the end of the day, we are all we have because the world is
Mm-hmm.
not on our side. Us as trans
No,
people have to,
definitely not.
yeah, we have to diagnose ourselves and like figure out our own mental health. Like, yes, you can go to therapy, you can go to gender therapy, you can whatever, but at the end of the day, like some people can't too. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly. A lot of people can't.
it's all about figuring this out for ourselves, and the more people who figure it out for themselves can help others. And I think that's why this shit is so important to talk about, because there's so many kids out there too who are struggling with their gender identity just like you and I were, and they have no fucking clue that they even are. And if somebody is just like, "Hey, like this is a thing." One
Mm-hmm.
kid could be like, "Oh my god," and it could save them a lifetime of pain. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's why, like, I think representation is so important. Because, like, also, like, I work with kids, I work with autistic kids specifically. And also, there's like a high overlap, which Anthony talked about this, but there's a overlap between like the trans community and autistic community. And I work with autistic kids and like I work with kids in general. And like to me, the way I view it with like the whole situation with parents, I was like, worst case scenario, a parent has a really big issue with it and like they move to another team. Because I know my like job was like they were very much like, look, these are his pronouns name. They weren't like you cannot use it. They were like they presented it as like this is not an option. Like this is
Good.
gonna happen. Like, but we want to make y'all aware, which is
Yeah.
good. That's how it should be presented.
Yeah.
But like I was like best case scenario, one of these kids later on in life starts to think about or realize that maybe they're trans or they're non-binary or whatever, and maybe they look back and they're like, there was that one person that worked with me, like there was that one teacher that was kind of looking this way and then started looking this way and they changed their name and maybe that's what they were, you know, and maybe their parents are more educated and maybe their parents are like, oh, this isn't like, which I love drag, so like don't even get me started on that, but like, but people get it confused though and they're like, I feel like they picture just like a guy in a dress or a girl in guys clothes and like that's not what it is.
Mhm.
So I feel like they also like maybe the parents have representation of like I think I'm a good person personally, so like I feel like the parents can look back and be like, there was that one guy and like he was really great and he was cool and like he seems so much happier and more confident in himself afterwards, like could that be what's in store for my kid? Like, so to me, I'm like the representation of that and working with kids is so important because like and working with autistic kids at that, like maybe, and maybe none of them turn out trans, that's fine obviously, like I'm not like saying like
Mhm.
these kids need to be trans. Like I'm just saying though, like if one of the like even like the other 50 kids at the center still saw my transition and still like were aware that my name changed, there just wasn't a conversation to be had with them about it. Like because I don't work with them directly, but they all saw it. So like if that can make one of them feel more comfy talking to a parent in the future, or like for a parent having more understanding, then I think that's 100% worth it.
Yeah, and we didn't have that and everybody
Exactly.
before us
Did
didn't
not
have
have
that.
that.
And if we did, it would have changed a lot, I'm sure.
100%. I agree.
I appreciate you sharing all that with me. First of all, I want to say I know that stuff is really not easy to talk about, especially in front of everybody who's going to listen to this and whatnot. So thank you for
Facts.
being vulnerable with me. I know that was probably hard, but you sharing your story means the world to me, especially, and I know it means the world to a lot of people listening. So you should be proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Um, that being said, trans song of the week. I'm excited about this one with you because I feel like you
Yes.
you went in, you went hard for this.
I was excited about this one. So my favorite song is "Who Do You Think You Are" by the band Camino. I sent Cody lyrics last night because I'm extra, um, and I really like the song. And so the song is called "Who Do You Think You Are," and it says, "When you look at me in the mirror, you're getting hard to recognize." And I feel like that's like me talking to myself, being like looking in the mirror, like it's hard to recognize myself because I don't, my body's not matching
Mhm.
my brain,
Right.
obviously. And it's like girls don't know you're just a guy. And honestly, like I had friends, I still have friends that are girls, and I feel like that was always my experience of being like,
Mhm.
I'm just a guy, just get it.
Yeah.
Um, I like when it says like, why do I feel different? I'm not any different because like I feel like we all have an experience like in social dysphoria and stuff, like feeling like you're different, but you're not. Like you're the same, but you just feel like something's different. You're just hard on yourself.
Right.
Um, I think my favorite lyrics is like, because I knew who you were back at the start. Now, who do you think you are? Um, because it's like even though like I didn't consciously know as a child, like I feel like subconsciously a part of me like knew something wasn't right, just didn't know what it was.
Right.
So like I don't know, that lyric is like my favorite, and it says it so many times in the song. It's like who do you think you are? Like I knew who you were back at the start. So like I'm just like, oh, that part makes me like happy because
Yeah,
I relate
period.
to it.
I love that. Is this like is this
So
song
yeah.
about being trans, or does it have
No,
like a
it's
different
not.
meaning?
It's just a song. I don't know what the meaning of the song is, but
It
like that's
100% sounds like it's about being trans. Like
it does. That's what
could have
I'm
fooled
saying.
me.
It's like I miss the innocent kid from Memphis that you used to be because I knew who you were back at the start. So it's like literally talking about like missing like this kid, and I feel like I relate to that because I'm like I do and I don't because like I didn't have a great childhood. Obviously, we've established that, but like but like still though like there's like still an innocence to an extent maybe of being a child that I did have a little bit of experience with, and I feel like I want that back in a way. So like, but like to go back and be like, this is who you are, like everything's gonna be okay. So, anyways, but
Period.
like I said, favorite lyric is like, I knew who you were back at the start. Who do you think you are?
That's awesome. I think that sounds
Yeah,
like a really cool message to the trans people.
I agree. I agree.
It's a great song. I listened to it. I highly recommend everybody check it out. And thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes,
I appreciate it.
they have a lot of good songs.
Period. I'm gonna check them out.
You should.
Where do you want people to follow you, Max?
My Instagram is I'm gonna spell it out because it's a little weird, but like it's IIT_S Max. It's Max.
Period.
And then TikTok is Max4780. I had like 2 videos, so I literally don't care that much, but
Yeah, definitely follow Max and make sure you follow me at HRT Podcast on TikTok and Instagram. I post every single day. Discord, please join. I would very much appreciate it. Max has been in the Discord since the very start, and look
yes, I
where he
have.
is now. So proof that the Discord is good for you. Patreon. I just shot an episode yesterday that is really, really cool, and it's gonna come out soon. And I have a little funny bloopers from that. This episode, actually, I'm sure I'm gonna take parts out and put it onto Patreon too, since this one's a little longer. So if
Really?
so if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe to me on Patreon. I actually have content on there, and I work really hard at it, so I would
It's
appreciate it.
good. Go watch.
Thank you. And yeah, that's about it. Make sure you subscribe to me on here. I drop videos every Tuesday. And Max, thank you so much for being on. I think this was a very informative episode, and I'm really glad that we got to do this. I've been wanting to get you on
Me
for a
too.
while, so this was great.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I will see you next week. Bye.